All right, this piece of equipment right here we're going to go over is called the bandsaw. And the reason it's called a bandsaw is if I open up this door here and you take a peek in here, there's one continuous saw blade. Here it is right here. And it goes around this big idler wheel. This thing spins. So the blade goes all the way down through the table, around an identical wheel down here at the bottom, back up through the top, and around the other side. Okay, so if we were to take this blade off, it would measure about 180 inches across or around. Okay, so if I took this thing off and cut it, laid it out on the floor, it'd be almost 18 feet long. A couple of parts you need to know on this machine are the blade guides. That's what these little guys are right here. Okay. This is the table that I got my fingers on, where you position your material to cut. This little pedal down here at the bottom, this is the brake, so we can make this shut down real easy. This one right here, this is the blade tensioner, which you shouldn't have to mess with. And the one in the back, this is the guard, the blade guide height adjustment. So as I'm turning this wheel here, the guide is coming up. And then you can lock that in place when you're done. All right? Before you use this machine, there's a couple things you need to check. Number one, you need to come over here and look in this sight glass, and I want to make sure that the blade is in the middle of the wheel. And this looks pretty good. I also want to come down here and I want to look at the guide bearings. That's these ones right here. If you look at these are really close to the saw blade, but they're not touching it. And you want to make sure that the blade is in the middle of the two guide bearings. Okay? In the back of it, way over here, this little piece right here, this is called a thrust bearing. And it's got a little groove in it, and you want to make sure that the blade is inside that little groove of the thrust bearing. All right? So those are the things you need to check before you turn the saw on. All right, so I've checked all the stuff and everything checks out. It looks okay. Before I set this up to cut and turn it on, I need to adjust the height of my guide bearings. Okay? As a general rule, you want them to be about 1/4 of an inch above the material that you're cutting. Okay, so for thicker stuff, that's the rule, about 1/4 of an inch or finger width above the material that you're going to cut. Most of the stuff that we cut on our bandsaw, the guide bearings only come down to about here. So we're going to lower everything down all the way down, and that leaves us about 1 inch in between the two, between the guide bearing and the material. That will still work. You just have to be really careful that you don't get your fingers in here. Okay? So now I've got everything set up. I need to check out and draw a line on here so you guys can see what we can cut on this. The bandsaw is one of the only machines in the shop that can actually cut rounded designs. Okay? All the other saws in here cut straight. The razor gauge over there cuts cross-cutted stuff. And I'm going to show you another piece in the back that's set up just for ripping things. So to get on a line on the bandsaw, we're going to draw our curve in here. This thing cuts curves. The general rule for how tight of a curve this machine will cut is the width of the blade. So the fatter the blade, the less curve it'll cut. The skinnier the blade, the tighter the bend you can cut. Okay, so right now on here we have what is a 3/8 wide blade, and this is pretty good general purpose blade. It cuts pretty good curves, but it's not very good at cutting stuff really straight. So if you needed to cut something really straight, we can put a thicker blade on there, and that would help you keep everything lined up and straight. So as I said, the skinnier the blade is, the more tight the curve you can get. The fatter the blade is, the more straight line it cuts better. All right, so let me mark this piece of wood, and then and I'll show you how to make a cut.